Today I'm going to talk to you guys about the DJI Ronin S and the Ronin SC, and specifically how to choose which one of these two gimbals to buy depending on what camera you've got. Now, I'm not going to go into specific camera models, but I do keep seeing people post online, which one of these two should I buy for this setup? Or I've bought the Ronin SC and I'm trying to use it with this camera, because whilst there is a difference on the payload capacities, there is a few more things that you do need to take into account before deciding on which model to go for. Okay, so to try and keep this as simple as possible, there are a few things you do need to know between these two gimbals first of all. Overall functionality is virtually identical on the SC and the S now since DJI have updated the firmware. However, there are two main differences. The first, that the payload on the Ronin SC is only 2 kilos, whereas it is 3.6 kilos on the Ronin S, and the Ronin S has dedicated 12-volt outputs to allow you to power your camera, but the Ronin SC does not. And whilst the Ronin SC can power specific models over the USB-C connector, it isn't every camera and it is only specific compatible ones. So if you do need your gimbal to be able to power your camera and it isn't compatible with the SC, then the S is obviously going to be the one to go for. However, if your weight is obviously over 2 kilos, you're going to want to go with the S as well. Now, if your weight is under 2 kilos, things do get a little bit more complicated. And whilst DJI do recommend the SC is only for mirrorless models, I have seen people successfully use it with DSLRs as well, but it doesn't come without issues. For me, I do keep it fairly simple and I do it as follows. The Ronin SC is really for the smaller mirrorless camera models such as the Sony a6000 series or the a6400 I've got here, the Panasonic GH5 which I'm recording this onto here. You can use a Sony a9 on it, but it is dependent on your lens as well, and if you are starting to use longer lenses you could run up against issues with the camera hitting on the back motor or actually stability issues as it's trying to move it around. Now, DJI do have a good chart that allows you to check what cameras and lenses are compatible, and I would strongly suggest you take a look at that first before making your purchase decision. However, really for me, the Ronin SC is for smaller setups, mirrorless models only with smaller lenses. If you are going to be using it with a number of larger lenses, you are much better considering the Ronin S because it has much more powerful motors and it is much better at handling the weight shift with the longer lenses compared to the SC, and it doesn't have the restricted frame because it is smaller overall. Now, I do get why a lot of people want to choose the Ronin SC over the S, especially even when using it with DSLRs because of its smaller form factor. However, you will come up against problems, and the chances are if you're trying to balance a larger camera model with a bigger lens, you are going to get stability issues, and you really do need to consider to go in with the Ronin S in those cases. Now, I do also see a lot of people post that I'm using this camera and I'm getting jitters, I'm getting vibrations, and again, all of this does come down to the setup. Either the camera isn't balanced properly on the gimbal, or it's the longest lens that you've got on is causing problems as the weight shifts. Now, to balance either of these is very similar. I do find the SC a little bit easier because you do have the axis locks, but there isn't a lot between them. But the SC is much more sensitive because it does have that smaller payload capacity and the overall frame is smaller as well. So what I would say when choosing which one of these to buy is, if you are not using an a6000 or a GH5 with a small lens, consider going for the Ronin S. Now, some people have also had issues with light cameras on the Ronin SC as well, for instance using an a6000 series with a smaller lens, and whilst that can happen, all you need to do in those situations is put it in a cage or just get a bit more weight on it. For me, I've got the a6400 here with the 18-105. This is at home both on the S and the SC as well, or sorry, the SC and the S, and I don't have any problems with it on either of them. However, if I was to choose a smaller lens, it would give me some jip on the Ronin S. Now, the important thing with these is whatever camera model you're using, you must make sure that it is perfectly balanced. And if it isn't, you will get problems. Things such as vibration, jitters, or the gimbal just not reacting as you would expect. And the first thing to do if you are having problems is triple check that your camera is 100% balanced in every axis, and then perform the motor calibration to make sure that the gimbal does set the motor strength properly. Now, the SC can still give you problems even when you do that if you are using a longer lens, because when it's doing the calibration, it keeps the camera nice and straight, and it basically vibrates it a little bit to be able to check how much power it needs. But when you're then using it, all that weight moves around, and the motors might not actually have enough power on board to be able to counteract that. And what you do need to do is then tweak the settings on the Ronin SC to be able to make sure it can cope. So do take that into account. Even if you have got it perfectly balanced, but you are having issues, if you are using a longer lens setup, you might need to up the motor on the the motor power for it to be able to actually behave as you would expect. For me, the 18-105 is about the longest lens I would ever consider using on the Ronin SC. If there was anything larger than this lens, I would put it on the Ronin S only because it will begin to struggle. And whilst it does have that maximum payload capacity of 2 kilos, you have to take into account of how much smaller the motors are than the original S and how it's going to be able to handle that weight as you are swinging it around. Now, as I was talking about the problems with it, again, if you are having issues, make sure you do calibrate it properly and you do have it perfectly balanced. Another question that I just want to answer on these two is about the focus, because I've seen a lot of people ask me, can I use the manual focus on the Ronin SC? Do I have to use the control knob? Do I have to have the focus motor? And what do you have to do? Now, the reality is, the Ronin S and the SC will work with compatible lenses with the internal focus motor on your lens with the focus control. However, if you want proper separate pull focus, you're going to want to get the DJI focus motor. Now, this is the one for the Ronin SC, and it is not compatible with the Ronin S. They are actually different voltages. There is a separate one available for the Ronin S, so you can use the external focus motor as well. You can also use it to control the zoom on your lens as well. You don't have to put it on the focus ring. You can simply put it on the zoom ring and have access to it on the controller as well. Now, if you are using the external focus, you do not necessarily have to have the camera hooked up via a cable. So that means your camera doesn't have to be a compatible model for electronic control. If you have a camera and lens setup which isn't on the compatibility list, but it is well under the weight and it is balancing fine, you can still use pull focus or zoom with the focus motor, because that is what will control it and not the internal focus motor in your lens. Now, using the focus motor is a much better way of controlling the focus, because what you do find is the focus in most lenses isn't linear, especially on the electronic ones, especially on the Panasonics, because they have the electronic focus control like on my GH5. So really it is dependent on how fast you're actually controlling it. And the Sony is very similar. It is endless, so it means you haven't got a fixed start and stop on the focus. But if you are using a proper manual lens with hard focus endpoints, this setup does work very, very well, and it does mean that you get a much more linear response from the focus control than you do when using the internal focus motor on the cameras. Overall, that's about it on this video. I just wanted to explain those few things. Now, as I've said, choose your camera wisely for your gimbal. Anything really bigger than a GH5 with a standard lens, I would be pushing towards the Ronin S. Sometimes I even find the GH5 is a little big for the Ronin SC, and it is much better with cameras like the A6400. If you're using a DSLR, I would strongly suggest going for the Ronin S and don't even consider the SC. Again, you can use it with non-compatible cameras with the focus motor as well. And if you are having balancing issues, jitters, movement, remember to make sure that it is 100% balanced, and make sure that you do have the motor output set correctly. And it is a little bit easier to do on the S because the SC does have some restricted controls. Now, if you'd like to support the channel, there are links to both the Ronin SC and the S in the description of this video as well. It is only by you guys supporting me via those links am I able to keep making videos like this one. Thank you very much for watching. Please do also subscribe to the channel. There is a button in the bottom right hand corner, and I will do another video again soon.